Okay, let's get this started. Out of respect for those who got here early, this will be recorded, so you will be able to hear it later on at your leisure. But for now, I'm David from DeXe DAO, and this is our DAO Talk, and that's every Tuesday, and we're talking all things DAO. Today, our guest is Eyal of DeepDAO. I met him in real life, and he's amazing, and DeepDAO is probably my favorite organization in the DAO ecosystem, and you'll see why soon, or hear why soon. But first things first, I'll give it up to Eyal to introduce himself, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the intro. A few words about myself. I've been in software and products for some 20 years, in crypto from 2017, and fell in love with DAOs in about 2018 when the entire category was just white papers. And the reason I fell in love with it, I'll add a few words here, since we're still a small audience. The reason I fell in love with DAOs is that I was an activist in the past, and I was a member of groups that and decentralized ambitions even before the word decentralized was used in the crypto set, before Satoshi. And what I saw is that no matter what good intentions you start with, no matter how much you think you're creating a group that will allow everybody's voice to count and everybody's voice to be heard, the end result is that 3 or 4 people dominate the group and basically make all the decisions themselves. And there's a great article about it called The Dictatorship of Structurelessness, where the author was involved in the 1970s women rights liberation movement. She coined a term called invisible elite. And these 3-4 people that I used to observe that were dominating the action, and this happened in 3 or 4 groups. So these people were the invisible elite. They will make decisions, but they will deny that they control the action. They will tell you, we're not controlling, we're just organizing, we're just doing stuff. And this created, time and again, discontent in the groups, and groups fell apart. So I realized there's a system-wide problem in this type of organizations. And I stopped being an activist. I was discouraged by it. And so that went on for a few years. And then when I read the DAO platform's white papers, I immediately felt that there is a potential here to solve the problem that I saw earlier. And this is how I joined the first DAO. It was around Genesis Alpha by DAO Stack. Started chatting with people in the channels, creating proposals, voting on proposals. And after a while, I wanted to see a DAO Explorer that will make the data available, will come true on the promise of transparency in DAOs. So I bugged the team for a while to do that, and then nobody was interested. So I sat down and basically wrote down the DeepDAO POC in 3 weeks myself. This is how we started about 3 years ago.
It's amazing to hear that story, that kind of the fundamental story of any sort of tech building, but especially in blockchain. I think of, you saw a problem, you were frustrated, no one else to do anything about it, and you just did it yourself, and here you go, you created, as far as I know, one of the few and definitely the best analytics platforms for DAO that I look at every week for sure. And it makes so much sense of the DAO world, because before DeepDAO, at least, it was hard to tell what's even going on there, and now you could see week to week, okay, the treasures are going up, the number of members are going up, and here's so many DAOs. So just, for us, we're looking at this overview, and it looks pretty simple and easy, but from you on the back end, I'm sure there's like tons of difficulty of finding this data. Can you talk a bit about the challenges of doing analytics and DAOs, stuff you have to deal with, what kind of roadblocks you're dealing with, what makes it, particularly challenging in DAO.
Sure. So I can actually give you a perspective of over time. So when we started doing this, the challenge was chaos. There was really no standards at all. There were platforms popping up left and right, and voting systems and voting ideas and different ways to count treasuries and so on and so forth. There was no standard at all. So the challenge was to collect the data from different platforms. Each platform requires its own integration, and then bring all of it together and normalize it so that there's a coherent view that allows you to see information across the DAO ecosystem. Now, over time, some standards did develop. There are a couple of more successful voting systems now. I'll say the names: Snapshot and the Compound Governor. And so now it's a bit easier to put all the data together, although there is still a lot of stuff going on. There's still basically chaos in the DAO ecosystem, and new ideas and big DAOs that develop their own systems. So it's still hard to connect all the data. But I think the challenge now is developing into really going beyond just the aggregations. If you look at DeepDAO today, you can see the treasury size and the number of token holders, governance token holders, and the number of voters, and the number of proposals, and all that. So the numbers from about. And now what you want to see is really going deeper, because DAOs are complex creatures. There's never been anything that is similar to DAOs in the complexity that is available in data. So now we're talking about developing insights from all this data. And this, of course, creates more and more questions and more ideas. And then you need to make decisions about what you concentrate. What do you, where do you center your attention?
So what does it tell you beyond the numbers, right? Like if you go deeper, what is it, the last, let's say, few months, the last year, what does it tell you beyond just the treasure moving up and down? What's going on there? Any undercurrents, any trends we're noticing, anything like that?
So these are really two questions in one. To answer the first, what you see is growth over the past few years. You see even explosive growth. So the treasury, when we started aggregating it, was about $10 million in DAOs, and it's now grown to around 25 billion. So that's like 2,500x. It's amazing growth. And in terms of voters, 3 years ago, there were maybe 300, 400 voters. Now there are millions. So the trend is clearly growing up explosively. Although, of course, with the bear market, there was a little bit of a dip happening, and then it's a bull market bear market cycle in DAOs as well. Now, if you want to start diving in a little bit into understanding these numbers, there are several metrics that are interesting. One of them, let's look at treasuries first. So, how healthy is your treasury? Are you managing risk? Is all your treasury in your own project's token, or are you Are you putting some money in ETH or in stable coins? And I would think that, especially in this market, everybody would say that if you have ETH or stables, then your treasury is healthier than if 99% of it is in your own token. So this is one metric, for example. Now, another one is, are you staking your tokens? Are you, in other words, making profit from your treasury, or is it just lying there doing nothing? Now, are you providing LP to your tokens, maybe to other tokens? Are you streaming to employees and so on and so forth? So there's an understanding of the treasury health and what are you actually doing? Are you investing your treasury? And, another question would be, what are the vesting schedules of the treasury that you have? For example, if you know that there are a couple $billion vesting in token treasuries in the next year or so, then you know something about the token, things like that. And now I can also talk about things that are beyond treasury. And for example, what are the personal interests of each voter? Are they more interested in gaming DAOs, for example, or in DeFi DAOs, or in infrastructure DAOs? You have enough data now that you can start creating a profile of the voters' interests. And this is very interesting for DAOs, as you can imagine, because they want to know their voters. And they also want to know their token holders who are not voting. So, for example, if you're Compound and you have token holders that vote on Uniswap but don't vote on Compound, then you want to know about it. And especially you want to reach out to these potential voters and find them and incentivize them to come and also vote on your DAO. So these are the kind of things that are actually beyond just aggregation, and we're getting into the realm of insights.
Just a couple of questions that I'm just curious about for numbers. I'll just do the first one because it might be straightforward. I remember a few weeks ago you had somewhere around 12,000 DAOs tracked, right? 11,000 something. Now you have over 22. Is it just a technological improvement, or the DAOs become easier to track? Like what explains such a big jump? And are we close to the total number of DAOs being tracked now?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So if you look closely at the wording under our on our front page on the organizations page, it's aggregated governances. So aggregated governances, and then the second number is enriched by DeepDAO. And by governances, we mean there's a lot of new snapshot spaces that happened over the past 2 months, actually thousands of new snapshot spaces. And we bring all of them because we want the data about their voters. Now, the DAOs that are actually enriched by DeepDAO, it's the 2,400 number on our main dashboard. These are the actual DAOs that we verified. So this explains the jump in the numbers. I'll be honest, I don't know yet what caused this. Is it something that tells you that there's a huge bull market coming, or are people just experimenting more? I'm not sure.
What do you mean by verified? Like, what does it mean that you see that they have governance token, that they have a structure, that there's some real wallets? Like, what does it mean for the average listener?
It means that there's a real project there, that we physically went to that project's website. We verified that there is content there. There is something real there. There are links to socials. These socials are not spam. So there's a real project there. There's a real DAO there.
Gotcha. And then the other,
that doesn't mean the others are not real DAOs. We just haven't gotten to them.
Right. They might be young or they might be in process, but it's interesting to see the breakdown of definitely have some sort of effort put into their web presence versus their snapshot spaces, but not sure what else, right? It's an interesting way to look at. For all we know, it might be that there's going to be 22,000 enriched by DeepDAO within a month or two, or whatever it is, right? or they may never be. It's interesting to see how it's going to develop.
Right.
Now, the other thing I was always wondering, again, looking at the dashboard, right? So there's, of all those DAOs, the 2,400 verified, enriched, and then, 22.5 total, there's only 315, 1.4%, with more than 100 governance token holders. And my first reaction, my gut reaction is, oh my God, why so few have more than 100 token holders? Does that mean they're all like scammed? But maybe there's another reason. Maybe it's just they're small by design and there's something else. So I'm curious if you have any insights on that I wouldn't necessarily have.
Where it's mostly a prosaic answer. We just weren't able to get to all these DAOs yet. So it's a large numbers of data, and these are many projects, and we have a couple of researchers, and they're going one by one. So probably that's the real answer. And also, we are in a bear market.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure it's going to change radically within a year or so. The other thing, and we talked about this offline a little bit. So for me, coming from, let's say, the regular marketing, not crypto world, when I see that there's only 30-some% of their 40% of active voters versus total government token holders, it seems the question is why so low. But then, as you explained to me, it's actually a very high number. Can you explain to our audience a little bit? I got to see the point once we talked, but for the audience, go through that again.
Right. So you need to compare to think about what are you comparing it to. So if you look at modern democracies, people are voting once every 4 years, sometimes 5 years or 6 years in other countries. And the voting percentage ranges between 50 in some countries to maybe 80 or 90 in others. I don't know the average, but I assume it's around 60%. And that's for one vote every 4 years. Now, with the DAOs, these are vibrant organizations that are happening every day. And sometimes there are 5-6 proposals, meaningful proposals a week. Like I was involved a little bit in ApeCoin recently, and they have like 6 proposals going on every week with hundreds or maybe thousands of voters sometimes. So when you think about hundreds or thousands of people interested enough to understand the project, engaged enough to read proposals, sometimes complex proposals, develop an opinion, and then take the time and vote, these are staggering numbers to me. These are huge numbers. Of course, maybe just 5% of the token holders voting on a particular proposal, but it's a lot of people. And if you want to understand these numbers, just think about I don't know, go to a daily newspaper or to a site and browse to an item on page 15 that deals about a law that just passed, and try to understand what it means and develop an opinion. Is it good? Is it bad? There's a lot of effort in that. It's actually has a name. It's called the problem of expertise. And to cross that problem of expertise takes a lot of effort. So to me, the fact that there are over 30% of token holders who took the time to vote at least once, I think these are very large, very nice numbers.
So let's talk about actually the problem of expertise. First of all, you personally, you definitely sound like you're more engaged than the average token holder with your DAOs and with your governance. How often do you delegate? How often do you skip voting, or do you try to do it all by yourself? What's your personal feeling on managing all the DAOs you're in and all the governance voting is happening?
Okay, so I'm actually the opposite example. Since becoming DeepDAO's founder and running a team and raising money and doing business and all that, I have no time to be engaged in anything. And other than, of course, DeepDAO. And I'm very interested in several DAOs, and I'm very curious about what's happening, but to really dive deeper and understand what's going on and really vote the right way is time that I don't have right now. And actually, this reflects on what I said for the previous answer. I'm in the DAO ecosystem. I'm interested in DAOs, and I still don't have enough time to actually go and really breach that problem of expertise. So now think again. Everybody's busy, right? Everybody's working. Everybody's has families, and still over 1 million people voted in DAOs, or over actually close to 3 million people voted in DAOs. That's a very large number.
It is, for sure, especially since it's not an absolutely easy to understand intuitive process, right? Like whether it's on Snapshot, which is pretty good, but still a bit of a learning curve. So it's impressive that people did that. Of course, on the other hand, so many people vote just to get the snapshot of them voting to get a token drop. So, right. And then it becomes really a matter of for how should DAOs design the governance in order to attract that kind of expertise and to fill that lack of expertise and create maybe, more expert delegates, more expert voting. For example, for Arbitrum, I delegate my tokens to someone whom I trust based on them getting me into Arbitrum, and they're in the second, third biggest delegate there, and very clear about why they vote a certain way. But with that being said, I have no idea what their actual expertise is beyond being a delegate and having a lot of people trust them, right? So what have you seen in terms of people, delegates, proving their expertise and showing their expertise and gaining people's trust to fill that void?
So I think delegation is right now the most popular methods for actually to bridge that problem of expertise. The breadth of this is not huge, by the way. It's not like there are millions of delegates out there. There's thousands, maybe like 20,000, 30,000. There are not a ton of delegates and delegators. But delegation definitely, if someone is taking the time and understanding a project well enough and they have a similar opinion to yours, it makes sense to delegate to them. The downside of this, in my opinion, is that, the purist in me is sort of disappointed. I would like to see people actually take the time and vote themselves. But we know that's a very difficult thing to do. The risk in delegation is that it becomes sort of mimicking the existing political systems, where the way to get people to give you their power is to do marketing, do sometimes shallow marketing. So in other words, it replicates the star system, the influential system, the star system, which I think is not a great thing in the real world. But still, I think delegation is an important part of governance. And we actually bring in a lot of data about delegation across two systems, both in compound governor and snapshot.
Yeah, I could see a lot of danger to that. Obviously, we don't want someone like, to use a more popular and less crypto metaphor, someone like, Taylor Swift or Kanye or whoever to be a leading delegate for a serious DAO, just based on their fame and people trusting them because of that, right? We want people who are actual experts and know what they're doing. So, not to push DeXe too much, but our approach to that is, with some sort of quadratic voting that, we'll talk about more when we release the product. But basically the idea that if a delegate is getting too many votes, then the power of each vote is lessened, right? So that no one has an incentive to accumulate a lot of votes. No whale, no delegate, no one, not even the team. But maybe there's some other ways. Are there any? Are you definitely giving a lot of thoughts? So Are there any other ideas we can think of approaches to limit the power of any individual for abuse and to promote a true meritocracy of expertise, a true plurality of experts, rather than creating a new oligopoly or star system about?
Well, our mission as DeepDAO is to bring the data and allow people to understand that. So, for example, we know about civil resistance in the token world, and in voting, we actually did a research recently about what we call nonsensical DAOs. So, nonsensical DAOs are DAOs that basically are silly. They have proposals like when Moon is BTC going to go over $1 million in 2022. Stuff that is just clearly silly, and there's no point in voting on it. But what you see in some DAOs, and mainly in snapshot spaces, you see that there are thousands of votes on these DAOs. So we like involved in that, and we assume that these are vote miners or bots or something like that. And there are actually a few delegates that are voting on nonsensical DAOs. So I would be aware of delegating my power to someone like that. This is one way in which we help prevent it. And really, we encourage people to see the data and see what people are voting. If you go to any DeepDAO profile, so you can search for any Ethereum and L2 address on DeepDAO and get a voting profile for this address. And we also recently added labels similar to Nansen labels, but for voting. And you can see that this voter is interested, for example, in DeFi or in gaming. It gives you information about who they are. And it helps you understand, do you want to delegate to them or not? So this is our way of addressing this issue.
I actually just looked myself up. I've never done this before, so it's all new to me. And my G-score ranking is 206,810. The G-score percentage is 3.06. 16 organizations, no proposal, 15 votes. That's not good, is it?
It's actually not that bad also.
Okay.
It means that you are involved. I actually don't have the number of addresses that voted at least 15 times, but it's not huge. It's not like the entire population is like almost 3 mil. So if you're 256K, that means you're close to the top.
Apparently, I just found out that I voted for a nonsensical DAO. Wow, I had no idea. I must have been. Now I'm curious which one it was, but I'll look into it later, not to distract from live. But now I'm curious. I see. There's a nonsensical snapshot here. One. I don't know what it was. Anyway, so I'll have to look into my history more closely now to see.
Are you a vote miner, David?
I'm a who?
Are you a bot?
A bot? Yes, I'm definitely a bot. Yeah, you've now discovered I'm an AI program. I'm not a real person. I'm just learning on the go, copying all the real people in crypto Twitter. But no, I hope I'm a human being. That's what my parents told me. But my own humanness aside.
Send me
yeah.
and I'll have our research.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. I definitely know I have not been as good of a voter as I should be, and I delegated a lot of my voting away, and I've been lazy, but it's good to see my profile. I think now I'm for sure going to be encouraged to look closer at who I'm voting for and which votes I'm there for, because most of the time I remember to vote after the vote's already over, and I look at snapshot and see, here are the votes that have ended for your DAOs. I'm like, crap. Okay, so yeah. Reminders are a good thing, and I'm sure there's ways to do it. I'm just being lazy. But is there? So actually, this is interesting, right? So with all the different numbers, all the different data points, and all the different categories and results that the algorithms that your actual analysts spit out and put on the website, are there any numbers you see that actually surprise you that you would not expect to be that way? Something that just really pops out in a good or bad way, just from seeing this so many times. Some anomalies, maybe, I don't know.
That's a great question. I guess I've been around for over 3 years, so nothing really surprises me that often. But one thing that is really interesting that we just recently added is I touched on it briefly a few minutes ago. Is what are DAOs doing with their treasuries? And so we aggregated across hundreds of DAOs and almost 1,000 treasury addresses. And there are the protocol that most DAOs are using for staking is Lido, unsurprisingly, and there are 45 DAOs that stake on Lido. And then Uniswap V3 is the second most popular one, and then Curve and Balancer V2, and then Uniswap V2. So these are interesting numbers. This is sort of it tells you if there are so many DAOs that are using a protocol, and the DAOs are managing billions of dollars, and they would not do stuff like that based on hype. They probably check things, and they probably create proposals, and then there are hundreds of people that potentially vote on these proposals. So there is a vetting process for actually using a protocol. And if DAOs vote to do staking on Lido, for example, it's all this is not financial advice, and I'm not a financial expert. I'm just looking at the data that we aggregated. So these numbers are interesting. And then you'll look at liquidity pools, and you're thinking, okay, so why are people providing LP on Uniswap V3 more than on Curve, for example? And you can start getting into the differences. These numbers are really intriguing to me, and this information is new even for us. So I'm actually thinking of writing a report on this.
Yeah, I'm kind of eating up all the DeepDAO data and reports very interesting. See, I read several articles, including them on the nonsensical DAOs, and it's just amazing. I remember one thing called Ivan DAO or I1 DAO or something, where the person was just measuring their own weight 3 or 4 times a day, and all of a sudden they became the top DAO by number of proposals, which was great, but it's absolutely nonsensical, right? Even if for that person it's important, it's not something that needs to define the category, right?
Right. One thing we thought, by the way, is that this is maybe some training ground for bots. It teaches the bots how to vote to go undetected or something like that. But we haven't gotten really that deep into it. We just had we thought that this might be one of the reasons that nonsensical DAOs exist.
Do you think, this is something that came up in at least one of our previous talks, that the way that governance tokens are being distributed right now, by just dropping it to everyone who participated with similar protocols, or there's some sort of drop farming, is the best way to go versus maybe some other structure of giving it to a smaller group, then is involved with the DAO, or in some other way controlling who gets to participate in the DAO, making it maybe smaller in scale initially, but attracting people who will be more involved and will care more about the DAO rather than just going big immediately.
Yeah, I think definitely it's something that DAOs need to think about, and I know you guys are involved in that as well. And if you know for sure that people are involved in your DAO, and they're not only voting blindly, they're also participating on Discord or on discourse or in other ways, then I think definitely you need to reward these people. Now, it probably also we're actually also looking into that ourselves. The labels that you see on each profile allows you to say, okay, I want to reward all my voters, but I want to give more to people who are interested in gaming, because maybe my project is branching into gaming, and you can come to DeepDAO and get this information. And it really also depends on your project's goals, your project strategy. So maybe your strategy is to go big and then you give your tokens to more people, or maybe it's a dual strategy and then you reward the participants and you give less tokens to the based on other criteria that include thousands or tens of thousands of people viruses.
Yeah, I mean, that's the conversation that we're having with other DAO, of other people working in DAOs. And another question that comes up actually is, for delegates, for the experts, should they be rewarded? How much should they be rewarded? In terms of some believe that delegates should be in it altruistically for wanting to look at the community and should be rewarded for other work that they do, building work that is not delegation, to kind of prevent abuse and people being in for the wrong reasons, while others argue that this slants it towards people who are already rich, who have other means, and really kind of shuts off people who need to work, who need to feed their families, right? Because it's not like everyone in the world just has lots of money sitting around to survive on and can do this for fun. Do you want to weigh in on this? What do you think in terms of compensating delegates?
I actually am curious about what you guys think, and do you see that? I think you probably have more information right now than me. Delegation is not, sometimes it's not just for breaching the expertise gap, or sometimes people delegate to other projects for other reasons. So I'm wondering, what do you guys think? Sorry for turning the question around.
Yeah, no, why not? Anything goes in this space. I'm happy to answer. I'm not speaking for everyone at DeXe, but our general approach, I would say, at least the way I understand it personally, and I would agree with it personally, is that people do need to get compensated for their expertise, and people need to get compensated for their trust in the experts. So what I mean by that is the DeXe approach, and we'll talk a lot more about it once we launch our protocol for DAO building, of course, right? I don't want to take any thunder away from our marketing team, but the approach is that delegates will be rewarded and should be rewarded for proving their trust and taking on tokens of the token holders, and the token holders should be rewarded for giving their funds to different delegates with their expertise, with the obvious caveat of any single delegate should not accumulate too much voting power and too much wealth. Not so much wealth, really. The voting power is the consideration here. So our incentive system is set up in a way to reward multiplicity, plurality of experts, and the goal is, right, one thing that we're striving towards is to make expertise very specific and really beneficial in terms of people who know marketing should be trusted for marketing decisions. People who know tech should be trusted in tech decisions, and people should delegate to them for those types of decisions with proper checks and balances. But when that works, absolutely they should be rewarded, and absolutely people who trust them should be rewarded. I think personally, and I think that a lot of people in DeXe DAO would agree that the best system that we can do so far, at least with the knowledge and the tools that we have in the DAO ecosystem, is to make personal incentives and personal interest aligned with the overall DAO and society's interest. As I know, simplistic as it might sound, I think it really is possible in terms of it's not necessarily the altruism has to make people suffer or not benefit. I think it's possible to do both, to watching out for your own skin, so to speak, and to also do good for everyone else. That's kind of the goalpost.
That's fascinating. This is why I'm excited about the DAO ecosystem, because this kind of stuff was impossible 2 or 3 years ago. And now all of a sudden you have enough data and enough DAOs doing things this way so that you can actually pull this off. I'm curious, what data points are you using to determine which delegates are the right ones, or the ones that should not be incentivized?
Well, this is where I would love to turn the tables back on you, and because you are the kings of data, right?
Right.
So maybe even after the live, it'd be great to have a longer conversation about data points, because we have, of course, our tech people, but you and the experience you have in research is tremendous. But for us, it's not only data points, which of course are then what we use in terms of on-chain voting record, right, and everything being transparent. But beyond that, it's important to not forget the democratic aspect of it. These, DAOs are DAOs; they're not meritocratic, authoritative regimes. So each DAO is in their own free will and power to trust their own experts through the proposal process. So for us, proposals are key, and the DAO process is key, right? So people get to choose their own experts, and some may choose people who are not that great, right? But that's their choice. And we believe that if there's enough legitimate experts that make themselves available, then most of the people hopefully will make the right choice. And then the secondary system of that is for a DeXe or another organization, eventually, of course, for a DAO or a distributed system of some sort, to determine overall experts who have proven themselves. And the data points to that could be varied, right? It could be old school Web2 data points of their LinkedIn profiles, their resumes, their case studies, their references, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's tons of data points for that. To Web3 data points of their on-chain voting record, their social media interactions, their Discord interactions, their proposals, the DAOs that participate, including, as you mentioned, right, if they participate, the delegate participates in a bunch of nonsensical DAOs, then maybe they're not so much of an expert, or if they're making a lot of questionable voting decisions, or if they're a bot like myself, right? So,
Right.
definitely lots of data points to work with. Definitely moving target. Something that I personally believe is going to be still a few years in the making in terms of getting it down exactly, but I think we've made huge strides towards that, and I've seen the product, right, that I don't want to talk too much again, not to still fund it from our marketing team, but we have some really amazing stuff. So, in the next couple of months, and I'll end our self-promotion there, but in the next couple of months, I strongly recommend that people keep an eye on their socials, because there's going to be some really cool reveals about the DeXe protocol.
That's great. Actually, we do have some data points on that. So, when you're saying you want people who are experts in marketing to be the delegates for marketing and so on and so forth. So you can actually look at DeepDAO's categories and see if that person is voting, for example, on media and communication DAOs. That then it strengthens the idea that potentially they understand in marketing, or if the proposal is dealing with NFTs, you can look at their voting records and see if they're voting on several DAOs that are that specialize in NFTs, or maybe in investments or infrastructure. So the size of data that already exists in the DAO ecosystem allows you to actually look at their existing resume of sorts, like DAO resume. And I think that, together with their LinkedIn profile or other data points, can actually create a pretty solid picture.
I think so too. And, just thinking about it as a DAO voter and participant, I would not, if I were personally delegate and my background's in marketing, I would not want to trust myself with decisions on tech stack, for example, right? Or even on the legal, even though I do have some legal background. On marketing, yes. And I think it would be really cool to have those data points clearly displayed where people are shown as clearly a marketing expert, clearly a tech expert, etc. And that honestly, I think it would. I know it's a little thorny to get into politics, but honestly, I think it would be beneficial, potentially very beneficial to make our politics that way as well, where instead of having, one president or prime minister, whatever it is, and um, X number of people in some sort of Congress, um, to be experts on everything and really on nothing, have experts on specific things with a clear voting record, right? I mean, I definitely know in Israel, but also in the US and in many other countries that I'm aware of.
Right. I mean, I'm currently in Israel, and our politics here is in such shambles that any different system would work better than what we have right now. But that's really a topic for another day.
Yeah, I'm going to be back there for the municipal elections, and that's going to be fun enough. But for the national elections, whenever they're actually going to happen,
Right.
we're going to have an interesting conversation. But that's not for this live. But yeah, what do you think? Which data points are people not considering yet that maybe we should be for downloading? And we talk about the online voting record, the DAOs participating. Are there any data points, any activity that's kind of flying under the radar?
We're actually developing a DAO health metric, but we'll consider the entirety of the DAO data. So your treasury health, your treasury investments, and your voting history and voting record and proposals. And I think that the holy grail for us is to understand if good governance contributes to the project success, or in at least some cases to the token price going up, then the DAO ecosystem won. Of course, there are other ways to win, but again, it's quality governance. If you have hundreds or thousands of people voting, and you can see that related to this, the token price is going up, then all of a sudden, the model has some, at least in terms of correlation, it has some proof that it works. So again, I don't think there's one metric or one number that we're overlooking, but in terms of analysis, we're just scraping the surface. We're just beginning to understand what does all this data mean.
Is there some behaviors that may not be reflected in data, but still important to consider?
Well, sure. We're mostly bringing voting data on-chain or snapshot off-chain. We're currently not considering, Discord contributions, Twitter followers, and all this kind of stuff that probably should be taken into account, and definitely is on our roadmap to add. And I think these require their own analysis for sure.
Good. Do you think this maybe as a gut feeling, or maybe from your research, that if analyzed deeply, the social media activity, obviously crypto, Twitter, but even more so Discord servers of different DAOs, then you could see certain trends emerging before they are reflected in the voting, maybe even market trends, but certainly within the DAOs?
I think it's an open question, but the answer probably is that yes, you can, but you really need to be in the channel. I don't think just the numbers will tell you that. We know that a project can jump from 0 followers on Twitter to 100K in 2 months. If you pay enough and you do marketing enough, that then you get that. And we know the influentials industry. If you pay enough people who are influentials in the ecosystem, you can get a lot of followers. So this can easily be bought, while voting records cannot easily be bought, putting the nonsensicals aside. So, yeah, again, to recap this, I think that social media activity is meaningful, but you have to be careful when looking into it. It cannot be the only data point.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about a certain blockchain game, Discord. I'm not gonna name them, but they had an interesting game mechanic and premise. So I went to the Discord. They were advertising another one, and I went there and I looked at them, and they seem interesting. But the team members or mods, the 3 or 4 people, and you could clearly tell who they are by their handles, just kept posting questions to each other and answering them as if they're a random new person coming in and trying to learn about the game. And that just immediately put me off the game, even though it seemed like an interesting game. It just felt like such an unnecessary fake activity of promoting the game and really off-putting. So I get what you're saying about it. People buying social activity and just not being very real with it.
Yeah,
Which is some experience.
That's one of the things that are great about blockchain DAOs. The fact that this kind of data exists for everyone to see, and you can really verify activity or find nonsensical voters. You can actually get the data. And to me, that's a step forward in the way people are getting organized. I totally believe in DAOs for exactly this reason.
I do too, and I think we're yet to see the true power of DAOs. Especially, I think this cycle is going to be much more use case focused and less hype focused. I mean, who knows? But actually, speaking of cycles, I know there's always people that want to hear this. So as we're wrapping up, just to throw it out there, on the data that you see now, and you mentioned this a little bit about the number of spaces ballooning, do you see signs that we're approaching bull market, or at least people are anticipating that? Not as financial advice, but just, observation.
Right. I think that, the famous crypto cycle that we're all aware of. And this is the last year was the bear market year, and now it's apathy. But I don't want to too deep into this cycle. I think right now there's a lot of regulatory unclarity with DAOs, with the U.S. authorities moving this way and that way, and not completely sure how deeply are they looking into DAOs. And I think this still contributes to DAOs being dormant a little bit. And I think once the regulatory frameworks are easier to understand and are clear, and that you're on safe ground, we're going to see an absolute explosion in DAOs. And whether it comes next year or 2 years ahead, I cannot say for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's coming.
All right. Before I ask you my traditional last question, because we're running up on the hour, just something that I've noticed from week to week, just very small, curious thing that's totally random, but still, Arbitrum's holding pretty steady with the #1 treasury size position for weeks now, if not months. And Optimism is really getting close. BitDAO is really getting close. Just for fun, do you think they're gonna flip Arbitrum anytime soon? Or are they destined to be just behind?
I have no idea. What I do know is that last year, pretty much every VC you spoke with were investing in infrastructure, mostly in L2s, and you can see that 3 of the top 6 DAOs are L2s, Arbitrum and Optimism and Polygon. And Gnosis really is an infrastructure. And then there's the Uniswap, which is DeFi. So the top the top DAOs right now are infrastructure, or the L2s. And I think that means something. Whether one L2 becomes the winner, or two of them or three of them, I cannot predict that. I would encourage you to look deeper into the data, see what their treasury health is. Is it owning their tokens, or are they leveraging stables? I think you can answer. You can develop a strategy for answering this question.
Yeah, I really like that their infrastructure, and even I would say DYDX and Uniswap and ENS for that matter, I would say part of infrastructure, because you do need swaps, you do need leverage and options trade platforms of some sort for it to be a robust system. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
So I think it's very encouraging, right? Rather than seeing, no offense, but DAO or, I don't want to name too many ones, but ones that are a little more on the fun / hype, like now again top. So that's encouraging. And we already came up an hour, so okay. So to let you go, I just want to ask a question I always ask at the end. What other DAOs, what projects, or even what people in the DAO ecosystem, or even in DeFi, would you recommend? Would you like to give a shout out to? This is, this hour, this DAO Talk is really about discovery and education. And so if there's anyone you want people to take a closer look at, this is the moment.
I cannot really choose between DAOs, because we're neutral in DeepDAO. We love all DAOs, so I'm not going to tell you look at this one or look at that one. I would encourage you to come to DeepDAO and look at many of them, and really get to know more DAOs and to understand their data, and base your decisions on when we always say the disclaimer: do your own research. So go to something like DeepDAO and do your own research based on the data.
That's fair. And I learned quite a lot today, even though I go on DeepDAO several times a week and not daily. For example, I had no idea. I looked at it, but just looking at it now, from all the top treasury ones, only Polkadot is exclusively in the dot. Only has dot in its treasury, while others have to some extent some other ones. So it's very interesting to see, obviously, a lot of stables, Ethereum, and it's a very interesting picture to see what tokens DAO prefers to hold. And of course, that's still just the surface of what DeepDAO can show you. So really appreciate DeepDAO, and totally recommend for everyone to take a look at DeepDAO to get a clear picture of what's happening with the DAOs, how it's changing, what kind of trends are emerging. Maybe discover a new DAO, maybe become active or more. I think good analytics, clear interface analytics are a huge step towards more active and more conscious governance. So for those reasons, including many other ones, but especially for those reasons, I personally appreciate DeepDAO. And again, thanks to Eyal for coming by. We'll talk about it afterwards as well, of course, but thank you for coming to this live. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. This will be available as a recording, of course, right? So you can listen to it over again. We'll be back next Tuesday again. But for now, thank you, everyone. And again, thanks to Eyal, DeepDAO. Again, seriously, one of my favorite, not the most favorite, DAO analytics organizations out there.
Thanks.
Or DAO business in general. Yeah.
Thanks very much, David. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to end it.